Hey, welcome to my LinkedIn Live. Good morning to those of you on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. Here where I'm at. I'm out at Pax River by the Naval Air Station out here. And it is sunny, beautiful. I'm assuming not too warm, but that makes for a good day. So I just pretend like it's really super warm and nice out there. I'm looking forward to talking to you today about the Army's FY23 budget, going through, doing an overview for government contractors. This is designed specifically for those of us who want to look at the budget from a sales perspective, business development, capture, proposal writing. That's a different way of looking at it than a financial analyst, a strategic analyst or something. An analyst looks at it one way, and that's fine. And then when you look at it from a sales perspective, you're looking at it to try to find nuggets of information, generate action items that can help you with business development, understanding, capture. I was actually just working with a customer today on FAA, and we were showing her something similar to this, saying, look, when you're doing a call plan and you're preparing to go in for a meeting, here's how you can prepare some of the questions is by looking at these documents and asking the customer to specifically talk to certain areas. Well, when you go through the budget, you can find the same stuff. So that's what we're going to talk about today is the budget from a sales perspective, as a person who's doing sales, responsible for bringing the revenue in, not a financial or business analyst type way of looking at it. Okay, so if you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I am the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. And I want to welcome you to my daily LinkedIn Live federal sales training where I teach processes and tips for you to have success in the federal market. Excuse me. I spent 20 years as a small business owner in the federal market. And since 2017, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process, we achieve the results we're looking for. We have predictable results, and that's what I want for you. That's why I bring this training to you. As we get forward, do me a favor, engage in the community, help me and help buyers and help the people in this community. Remember who you are by putting your company name, your core competency into the chat. For your core competency, use 2 or 3 words that really just help out. Occasionally, I look at the chat just for a second to see what pops, but right there, I like this one. Bay City mobile welding and pipe fitting. That is really a niched area, right? It's like welding or pipe fitting. I can see that, and that can begin to stick in my head. So ironically, the name Joey moved too fast for me to lock in. But do that, right? Help us remember who you are. I'm going to be doing the training. I'm going to be focused on sharing my screen for most of the time. I won't be overly engaged in the chat now. I'll come back, but engage with everybody else because this is where people can find you. And keep in mind that it's not just finding you live. We have 50 or 100 people who come into the live events and watch this live, but then we'll have 1,000 people watch it in that first week or two on the replays. And this is really important. I get buyers who come in and watch this stuff. They love it. And they love that we're communicating the industry. And so when they come in and see what I'm presenting, they're also getting a chance to begin to meet companies like yours. So definitely engage in the community. And if I ask you as we go along to put something in the chat, do that for me. Let me know that you're understanding what I am talking about. Okay, I want to share my screen. I'm going to go through this is going to be a fire hose process, right? As we push forward, I want to give you the most amount of information. So let's get started. I want to share my screen here. Okay. So I think we should be good to go here. This is the budget highlights, right? I look at each agency or each department's highlights before I dive into the 400 or 500 pages that are the full budget. But the highlights give me a lot of good stuff. And I want to start going through this with you. What I've done is highlighted, no pun intended, certain aspects of this document. I want to show you as I read through it for my customers, trying to find nuggets that I can bring to them. And today I'm going to be talking about cybersecurity again. This is where I like to play for the moment for these budgets because it's so easy for me to find it actually. But as I go through, I'm going to show you highlighted sections. I'm going to try to get you to understand why I'm doing what I'm doing or why I pause at certain stages. But this is only 45 pages. Yesterday I did the Treasury. That was 150 pages. But let's go ahead and get started here. And right at the beginning, I'm going to come in here and occasionally I'll go back and forth shrinking and raising the screen. But inside of here, I wasn't able to highlight, so I put these little comment things so I could highlight it. But here's something I saw right from the beginning with the Secretary's forward into the budget, but we're transforming ourselves from an Army focused on counterinsurgency over the last 20 years to the Army of 2020 or 2030, which is focused on supporting integrated deterrence efforts and building enduring advantages to support the joint force and multi-domain operations. The reason this captures my attention is I've got to pay attention. I've got to make sure my company is paying attention to it. My proposal writers are paying attention to. We might have been speaking to the Army from a counterinsurgency aspect before, but now they're moving. They're changing what they're doing, and it's important for us to go with that language. I put out many documents, shared many documents on LinkedIn related to the Army multi-domain operation approach or the defense's multi-domain. And so you want to go in there. But I highlight that because that's important to me. She's saying we're transforming. Well, if you're transforming, me as a supplier, I need to make sure that I'm along with you on that transformation. There's another line down here between the two boxes. The Army is focused on a strategically sustainable modernization path that accounts for climate resiliency, enables soldiers and leaders to use data analytics to strengthen processes, and provides soldiers the equipment they need to fight and win in the future as part of the joint force that we just talked about. So this is really important. Hold on one second. Hey, am I not sharing? Okay, hold on one second. Hey, let me see in the chat, just really quickly, somebody just got hold of me and said that they're having a problem there. Can you see me okay? And can somebody just give me a quick highlight that you can see what I'm talking about? I see the chatting, but I want to make sure you're able to see my stuff. I'm gonna wait for 1 second for that to come in on the chat, that you were able to see those couple of pages I was just sharing. It's like a 30-second delay, a 1-minute delay. I can see. Okay, so if you can see, then we're all good. And if a couple of people can't, that's fine. They can get the replay. Okay, apologize for that interruption. That was my colleague Gus, who's, you guys know, most of you know, he's always on there and tracking on the inside. He couldn't get in for some reason. So, but who cares about him? As long as you guys are here, let's get rocking and rolling. Okay, let me go back to sharing my screen. Okay, my point here is that what this Army is focused on, she's telling me what the Army is focused on in this modernization path, the use of data. If you're in the data side, this is really good. So it just helps me understand and be able to communicate back when I'm writing proposals or I'm doing business development and capture meetings. I can talk in the language that they have. By the way, if you see me look down, I've got a whole bunch of pages written here for what I want to track on. So then I go through the table of contents. And as I go through the table of contents, you can see this one, I don't have as much in here. I look for stuff that I want to highlight. And so a couple of things I highlighted, right? There's 3 components or services to the Army service, if you will, the regular Army, Army National Guard, and Army Reserve. I'm like, okay, let me track on that. The reason it's important to me is that they're different customers. They buy differently. And so I don't want to pretend like if I'm in the regular Army that I'm actually talking to the Guard. I'm not. And the Guard is a whole pool of money I can go after. So I want to know what they're saying. Modernization is where I live and breathe. IT and digital modernization, any professional services kind of fit in that arena now. And then because I know we got a lot of people on construction who are in the community, I wanted to dive down into military construction and base realignment as well. So the next couple of pages, so here, and it's just going into the overview, and I want to scroll down. I read all of these words, but I'm looking for things to pop out. So here, first thing you see is, okay, the budget request is about $170 billion. A lot of room, doesn't mean it's all coming to us, right? But I understand the general size of it. In here, as I start reading some of their summary, right? The Army is expanding our base of enduring advantages by investing in our people, our values, operational and institutional resilience, and our industrial and commercial partners. And this is important. Well, how are you doing that, right? When I go in and start talking with them, I can begin to see where are they investing it. This is just a quick little line that I got that was reminding me down below, look for where they're expanding on it, because this is important to me, right? How are you expanding into the industrial and commercial partners, which I'm a part of or something? The next line, right? The Army people strategy is designed to ensure the total Army will recruit, develop, employ, retain the diversity of the soldiers, et cetera. The reason that's important is for two. One is if I'm in any level of the training side, recruitment side, I want to know about this. This is important. But this is the first place where I'll pause, where it's saying the Army people strategy. In the budget, I'm hearing about this strategy document, which they're referencing. And I'm like, all right, let me go find that. And so out here, I find it, and it's 15-page Army people strategy talking about people, right? And this is from October 2019. You can see down here at the bottom. And one thing I wanted to point out is, in addition to the fact that you should go look at any strategic document that's referenced within the budget, I wanted to point out that this is October 2019. Don't worry about that. The government and DOD, they move in decades, not years, right? Commercial world moves in years. They move pretty fast. But there's just an acknowledged time delay on how fast the government moves. So these 2019 documents, 2020 documents, et cetera, some of the documents are 2017, 2018 because they haven't updated them yet, because the way they do it, it fits well. There's a reason we talk about 2030. There's a reason we talk about 2050, right? I mean, they can look out. They have to look out long range in the government. And so don't dismiss documents when you see them several years old. They're still relevant. They're so relevant that they're mentioning it in their budget. Okay, coming down, reading the bunch of it, and they did the same thing here. Here they're describing the Army modernization strategy. I'm like, all right, I got to go find that and see it. And here's another one. So the 2019 Army modernization strategy, I think I put this one out a while ago as well. And as you cruise through here, it begins to talk about where they're going, their framework, et cetera. I don't want to get caught up too much in there, but the idea is, as I go through an agency budget like the Army, I'm looking at the documents they're referencing it, because they will give me more information in relation to the budget, but they also might start alluding to goals, objectives, program offices or leads who are in charge of heading up an organization, et cetera. Okay, so let me keep coming down here to the next page. Same thing here. You can see the Army climate strategy. So on that one, I didn't go, I might have grabbed it actually. So right there, right? I went and pulled it up. I'm able to look at it and see what they're talking about, how that fits in. The climate strategy isn't just about weather. It's the whole implementation of the strategy. What are they doing? Where might my company fit in? Where might your company fit in? This idea, one of the things I want to pause with for a second is just, I really want to get this to sink in, is that research is gold. When you have done the proper research into the Army, as an example, you have the ability to be so much more knowledgeable about what they're trying to get done and shape the questions you ask them to understand their challenges and their goals much better, which is fundamental to capture and writing a good proposal, right? Is understanding, if they put out an RFP for something, why? I mean, what's the purpose of that requirement? I know in the PWS, it'll talk about some of it, but when you do your research like we're doing here, you have this ability to so much more make your proposal seem like it fits naturally in with their strategic thinking and addressing some of the challenges they have. Okay, so let me, page 6, I got a couple other pages here. As I come down, here they're talking about the Army's organic industrial base as primary means for ensuring sustainment of our combat systems. I don't know what that is, and I went and started researching it, but the reason I highlighted it here is to point out, when I come through, sometimes I look at something, I'm like, I don't know what that is. Well, let me go find it out. And so I'm going to continue to keep my eyes open for it in the budget, but then I'll take it offline and go, is there any play for us, for my company or my customers, to fit into the organic industrial base, if you will? And then the last one on page, these couple of pages here is, so they're talking about integrated deterrence. In here, the focus remains on the Army's modernization priorities. I want to understand what those modernization priorities are. Everything that I do should be aligning back to the way that the Army is talking about their priorities, not some generic thing that I'm describing. And then also, they're saying the Army's modernization priorities are supported by the 8 cross-functional teams and the Rapid Capabilities and Critical Technologies Office. So these 2 offices, these are tasks for me coming out of the budget. I wasn't aware of them before. Now I am, and I'm going to find out about them. If I can't find them on the internet somewhere, then when I'm having a meeting, when I'm talking to some of my contacts in the government or teammates, I'm going to be able to say, hey, do you know anything about the RCCTO or the CFFTs? What are the 8 cross-functional teams? I'm assuming they align to the priorities, but learning about that, that's why I highlight it. And that's why I want you to think about that same thing as well. And then down here, the last one I want to show you, just full page, last one on this section is they describe the budget priorities and messages. When I go through this, I just posted this out this morning as well, this document. When I go through this, I read this because it's one thing for me to come in and say, hey, I sell this solution, but what's the problem? What's the priorities? Well, right here, they are telling me the priorities for setting the budget that they're doing. And it goes through and it expands on this, and I can look into their strategy, find more. But one of the things that I do, and you might consider doing this, is when I look at this, page and I look at these priorities, right? The priorities there and the descriptions here, I begin to think to myself, well, which ones can I help with, right? This readiness, I might just cross out the whole. Well, no, I almost crossed it out, but deterring the adversaries, that's not really my world. I'll cross that out. Compete with and defeat the adversaries. That's not really my world, right? I don't even know what that is. And so I'm going to cross it out. But here it's emphasized regionally aligned readiness modernization model. And you'll see more about this later. But it says modernization model. I'm like, well, hey, maybe that's more professional services. Maybe I can play in there. So I'll circle that one, saying I want to go research that one more and learn more about where my company might be able to fit. Okay, so let me come back to my one pager here. So as I'm coming down, right, I'm in this whole new section where they're talking about the total Army. And this is an important part to remember. When I was in the Army, I was actually kind of a Army snob. I was in the Rangers, and we used to talk about going down to the regular Army, and then you had the Army Guard and National and the Army Reserves. It was a complete snobbish thing when I was carrying a machine gun. As I got farther in the Army, I began to see the power and the contribution of the Guard and the Reserve to the overall Army, right? And what we do out there. Well, you want to be tracking on some of this as well. Just an understanding of your customer. You should begin to know more about that customer than almost anybody in the customer, because you're looking at it holistically, the whole Army, the total Army, where people who are in the Army, they're focused on the command that they're in. How can they really be paying attention to everything else? Their job is different. But as a business developer or salesperson going in, using the budget helps us understand that. And so here I'm able to get a quick understanding for, 1.2 million soldiers and civilians supporting it. That's a lot. That's my user base, right? If I'm selling professional services in IT, million people are the user base at some point, right? Depending on what I'm doing. That's page 11, page 18. When I come down here and I'm further reading, one of the things that caught my attention was, in addition, this budget enhances cybersecurity by mitigating vulnerabilities in the control systems throughout the installations. Installations are military bases, right? That got me thinking, obviously I want to track on the cybersecurity thing, but do they have a specific person at each installation who's responsible for mitigating vulnerabilities downstream or at these installations? There's clearly probably a higher headquarter overview of it, but who's doing it at the installation? Let me put that down as a set of business development tasks that I do. I get out there, and it's not about doing this in the next month or two. It's about doing this over the next 2 or 3 years of just continuously diving deep into the Army, so I can begin to get contract awards of $10 million or $50 million a year. It's worth doing this level of BD. Here they also talk about the Army's strengthening the training and development of the acquisition workforce by establishing a separate budget line for those. And so you can go farther into it, but what I'm looking at is they're upping their efforts on trying to train the acquisition workforce. If I'm in training, then it's important to get in there. Frankly, as the GovCon Chamber, I want to get in there and train the acquisition workforce on how to do market research and actually find small businesses. Not how to do market research according to the FAR, but just how to do market research so you can actually find qualified small businesses who can help you. Okay, so coming on down here further on this, as I go through these next couple of pages, I'm tracking on cyber. And so in here, I can just pop down and see cyber in different areas, right? Here's 1.3 billion, or this is a million, 1.3 billion for cyber in the regular Army, right? And as I go down, 17 million of cyber, if you see it down here at the bottom, 17 million in cyber for National Guard. Right, it's one thing for me to go after Army cyber at the regular Army and up there, but what are they doing in the Guard for cyber? And then the same thing with reserves, 10 million in the reserves for cyber activities. Actually, this kind of surprises me that the cyber is higher for the Guard than it is the reserves. And I bet if I went back, I would be able to correlate it to the amount of people who actually are in the reserves and the Guard. But anyways, now I'm looking at that cyber budget spread across the board. And that's something you want to do. What do you sell? How can you begin to find it in the budget? So that's page 21. So I'm just still going down here. This next one, now I'm getting into that. Remember in the table of contents, I highlighted this modernization strategy overview. So in here, a couple of things that just really pop out at me. Over the last 2 decades, the Army has focused on counterinsurgency threats, while adversaries have modernized their forces with sophisticated advanced technologies. Our adversaries are on the trajectory to make a significant technological advancements that could erode some of our competitive advantage. If you've been tracking in the news at all, this is what people are talking about China in particular, for example, spending a lot of money on AI and other emerging technologies. This is what they're doing. Well, how can we contribute to the Army's need to compete at this level? They've been so busy with counterinsurgency, and now it's a whole different way of fighting, right? Or an additional way of fighting. This one down here, the modernization strategy centers around a single focus: to make soldiers and units more lethal to fight and win our nation's war. One of the things I keep reminding people is that if you're doing cyber or SharePoint or whatever, you don't just go in and that's what you're doing. If you're doing it at the VA, you're helping them with healthcare for veterans, right? If you're doing it at the Department of Education, theoretically, you're helping spread educational benefits and across the country or something. When you're doing it in the Army, you're helping them become more lethal to fight and win the nation's wars. Understanding your agency or your target customer's mission all the way down to the boots on the ground kind of thing will enable you to understand where what you offer fits and how you can talk about it, how you can understand and become this trusted advisor. And for me, a big part of it is in this budget document. I can go in and start looking at some of it. So that was page 21. So down here in 23, if I continue on, right, here's the research, development, and acquisition section. And that budget is $35 billion. It's really fascinating for me as I look forward, seeing where they're spending money. And I'm trying to figure out, okay, where are you spending money? Who's the person managed for that, responsible for the purse strings? But here they talk about in connection with this modernization strategy, they're focused on turning ideas into actions through experimentation and prototyping early in development. I talk about in government contracting, we want to shift left earlier than the RFI to learn about opportunities. Well, here they're talking about shifting left as well. Don't spend 6 months or 18 months or 24 months developing solutions that are going to be able to help the Army. How can we do rapid prototyping? How can we come in there with experimentation? And the reason this is important to me as a professional service or IT company, technology company, is I can look at this and go, they're on board with what we want, this agile, iterative approach. And one of the things that I tell small businesses that you are better at than any large company out there is you can change, you can turn on a dime, you can change and adapt to the changing and adapting needs of your customer. So in the Army, for example, if something happens and they have to change their priorities, change directions, well, not only are you able to do it as a small business with, like, let's say 100 people or less, kind of rapidly change, but the leadership is instantly there, able to make a decision almost the same day as maybe your customer says it. Well, you want to be highlighting this. This is a strength and it's a weakness of your competitor, the large, if you will. And that's just normal activity. So, okay, so that's page 23. Let's go to 26. Got a couple more here I just want to point out as I go down. So here I'm moving into missiles, which is way outside my range, right? But what I want to just talk about is as you come through and you're looking at the budget, you can begin to find things. I was talking earlier about somebody who's doing welding and pipe fitting or whatever. Well, here are spares and repair parts, support equipment and facilities. I don't really know what that is personally, right? But if I was supporting people who were selling products, right, American-made products, or doing the welding type stuff, well, looking at this and seeing the spending that's happening, 5 million, 7 million, 11 million kind of thing, it enables me to go in and start talking, let's say even to the small business specialists, to say, I want to find out, where is this money being spent? Who are the people I can talk to begin to introduce myself to you? So that was 26. If I go to page 30 here, same thing, right? Here's training equipment. that they're doing. You can see that the increases from 374 to 514 million. When I see this, I know that there's a lot of room for training, right? And it's not just web-based training that I might use on how to use a computer, but it's training equipment for using some of the military's machinery, et cetera, weapons. But whatever it is, if you play in this space, what they're telling you is there's a significant increase of 125 million or more in there. And that's important as you're planning out. When you're doing your strategy for 2023 and you're trying to say, where are we getting dollars? Well, this might be part of that alignment. 32, in here, this is just something else that caught my eye as related to research and development. As I'm coming through and looking at things, right? 2.7 billion in here for the science and technology. But they continue to seek out and mature technologies that address Army modernization, as well as enabling technologies, including project convergence and artificial intelligence. So obviously, if you're in the AI space, you should be knocking on the S&T doors over there and figuring out where can you begin to play, who can you meet with. But what I saw here was project convergence. I don't know what that is. Let me go research that. Remember, I showed you different major projects. Well, you can come in here and look at something like that and see that you need to create a task to go research project convergence. A lot of this stuff is just basic activity out there. Let me do this last page. So this last one's on construction. But as I come down here, I'm reading about some of the holds they had on place, and now they're focusing on replacement of aging facilities that directly support the Army readiness. The reason I highlighted that, right? I also highlighted there's 27 military construction projects. If I was in construction, what are those 27? I would want to know every 27 so that I could say yes or no to every single one on whether I want to be involved or not. Whether I get involved is a second thing, but I want to do that on the 27. But the line up here, the reason I highlighted it is when you're in construction, sometimes you might feel like you can't talk as much about how you're helping with the mission downstream. But understanding when we soldiers, and I was in the Army in the freaking World War II barracks, and I ain't that old, right? When I was in the Army, being in aging facilities is depressing, right? And so they're talking about that directly supports aging or Army readiness, the Army's soldiers' ability to be ready to protect the country and fight their nation's wars or whatever. Think about that from your standpoint. When you're talking about construction, you don't just paint or build. You're helping with Army readiness. It's a way of telling your story that really aligns your construction type work to the Army's mission, and it puts you up a level in the buyer's eyes, in my opinion. So that wrapped up those ones. I did want to highlight a couple of other quick documents that I had popped out. So I already mentioned the people strategy came from this, the modernization strategy. There's this other one, the Army Working Capital. And so this is 100 pages where it's laying out, let me see if it had it. So it begins to lay out like supply management operation budget or operating budget, industrial operating budget. This is where you can begin to learn a lot more detail depending on where it fits for you. But this document came out of that other one. I think I might have already talked about this one before, but the Army digital transformation strategy is important if you're in that IT and professional services space. And I think the last one is this Army medical modernization. So there's a lot of these documents that the budget aligns to, right? They create a strategy, but in order for the strategy to be executed, there needs to be a budget along in that line. And so beginning to tie them together is really useful. I showed you this one. The last one was an implementation plan. So when you're looking at the climate strategy, it's 50 pages. Take 1 hour and go through that and go, is there anything my company could do that aligns to this? If you want to get into the Army, understanding these documents is really important. I wanted to come back here. There's two others. I got one more minute here. When you're out there, here's that Army regionally aligned readiness and modernization model. I couldn't find an actual document, but here's a congressional research that helps me understand how they're realigning it to regionally readiness and modernization approach or something. And then and then here, just another document. It talks about as the Army transitions from that sustainable readiness to regional readiness. My point here is not to talk about readiness as much as if you're trying to sell to the Army and you're looking at the budget and these kind of documents, take the time to understand what all this means. If it takes you a month to begin to become knowledgeable about it, that's okay. Research is your job. If you want to make millions and you're the salesperson, by researching, you'll be able to have so much better conversations, be able to get in the door. All right, I'm out of time. Government contracting, not a secret. It's just a process. Part of the process is doing our homework. And I hope this helped you today. I'll see you.